Good morning, everyone. Good evening, wherever you are. Sorry about the delay getting in, and Jeff and I have overcome. I'm not sure if it was his end or my end, but we can hear each other now, and I hope you can all hear us. Hi, Jeff. Good morning. How's things over there where you are?
Pretty good. Let me just check and make sure it's streaming to my channel because I've got a prompt that says stream this to your audience. And it should already be streaming to
It
my
is.
audience, but
According to
okay.
my system, it is streaming to you.
Okay. Let me
Yeah, you are live. Bitter Pill is live.
okay. All right, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, so I've got three items on the agenda today that I'd like to talk about. Obviously, the big one for you and I is TikTok. Another one I wanted to talk about was Princess Kate. I don't know if you've been following that story. And then I'd
um,
like to talk about something a little bit more economy based. We're basically going to talk about the economy and how that's changing at the moment.
okay.
Mm.
And since we're talking about China US clashes anyway, maybe we could also talk about um, the position that China has taken with regard to uh, Israel and Palestine, and some of the things China has been doing to try and you resolve the conflict and um,
I'd be
challenge
very
the
interested
Western
in
narrative.
I'm very interested in how American media is viewing China's response to this. I can tell you how Chinese media is. So let's kick off with that. What's happening over there in terms of media saying what is China doing?
I haven't heard anything about the media saying anything about what China is doing. So yeah, I don't know if there's been any coverage of it or not. I mean, there was certainly very little coverage of the ICJ uh, hearings on South Africa's case charging Israel with genocide. There was next to no coverage of that in the American media.
Maybe I can enlighten you on something else there as well. Did you know that the South Africa case has been expanded to cover Australia too? They've taken
Oh,
the leader of the prime minister, the foreign affairs minister, the leader of the opposition, and the not the deputy leader of the opposition, but the defense minister of the opposition to the same to the ICC because the Australia signed up to the ICC for the same thing for being accessories to genocide.
yeah. I can't recall off the top of my head now, but I know there have been other countries that uh, have been added as well. I think Germany and
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, well, I'm hearing about that because I follow Australian news, being an Australian citizen.
yeah.
Let's go straight on to this particular one. Um, let's put this into a perspective, Ugu. There have been five ceasefire resolutions at the United Nations. Four of those Russia and China have voted for because they
Mhm.
all had the words immediate ceasefire.
Mhm.
China and Russia vetoed the immediate ceasefire resolution that the Americans proposed because it didn't say immediate ceasefire. They said, we believe in the principle of an immediate ceasefire and
Mhm.
should work towards it. And China said, we're not having that. We want an immediate ceasefire. Unless we get the wording that says this resolution provides for an immediate ceasefire and anything beyond that is an international crime, then we're not going to have this. That is why
Yeah.
China and Russia vetoed the ceasefire resolution. That's a fact, and I mean I haven't got it on hand at the moment, but if you go to read the resolution, and you can, it's online, very easy to find. Just search UN resolution that China vetoed, then you'll find the resolution and read it. And it said an immediate ceasefire while diplomatic negotiations continue. So they wanted diplomatic negotiations to continue to the point of an immediate ceasefire. And Russia has said, and China has said, no, we want an immediate ceasefire as the resolution. Not talking about an immediate ceasefire. We want the resolution to be the immediate ceasefire. That's why they vetoed that. And that's why they went ahead with the approval of the 4 that the US vetoed. So what we're watching here is America rewording it so that they can say, look how evil China and Russia are. They won't accept an immediate ceasefire. Well, they want an immediate ceasefire, and they will.
Yeah, well, Russia's proposed an immediate ceasefire resolution, and the U.S. vetoed it. So, yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at the recent resolution, but one thing that came to mind that I just thought I'd throw in because it was kind of interesting. You know who was one of the few countries besides Ukraine that did not condemn the terrorist attack in Moscow the other day? Australia.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I wonder why.
I don't know.
Yeah, the interesting thing was that 2 weeks ago, the US government were putting out warnings to avoid large groups to its own people.
Yeah.
So clearly they knew something that was happening just before the election. And it seems that the attack might have been planned for a week or so before the election rather than a week after the Russian election.
Yeah, I heard, I haven't had a chance to look into the details, but I heard something about that there was some other plot that actually was, unlike probably what happened with the actual terrorist attack, that actually was, associated with ISIS or some other terrorist group, and the FSB foiled that.
Right.
And that happened right after all these warnings came out. So I guess it's not really clear whether the warnings were about the attack that actually happened or about one that somebody tried to do previously.
Well, you're an American, Jeff. Let me ask you a question as a non-American. How is it that America can identify, and they've already done this, they've already identified who this was, they've said that they knew this was coming. How is that possible when they don't know anything about, for example, the Nord Stream, and they didn't know 9/11 was coming? How are they getting so good at this?
Well, they knew Russia bombed their own pipeline, right? They knew that right away.
Thought they did. Yeah. Do you think? Yeah. I mean, the speculation here. What Twitter is saying, the Twitterverse is saying that the bombing in Crocus, I think it was called, the theater in Russia, was a CIA plot, a CIA activity. What do you think about that allegation against your country?
Well, I mean, obviously there's all kinds of terrorist attacks that Ukraine has carried out that foreign intelligence services seem to have been involved in, such as the attacks on the Crimea bridge.
Yeah.
And I'm blanking on what else there was, that there was evidence of foreign intelligence agency involvement. But yeah,
Trevor,
definitely paid for it. Probably. Because I mean, we do know that at least 4 of the terrorists were fleeing toward Ukraine. They were apprehended just before they crossed into Ukraine. So why would they be fleeing toward Ukraine if Ukraine was not involved? Because there are other countries, such as Latvia, I guess, that are closer to Moscow than Ukraine is. So
yeah. So I mean, this is true. They don't know who bombed Nord Stream.
Exactly.
And within 1 hour, well, I mean, maybe they did have prior information, but we know who set up ISIS, and there's probably a few people still connected to ISIS.
Yeah. Well, Israel has connections to ISIS actually too.
Right.
Yeah.
Go on. Let's go back to
Well,
Israel. What are the Israeli connections to ISIS?
Um, I, it's been a while since I've looked at it, so
Mm,
I can't say much beyond that. I can't really give you any details, but
all right.
you
Okay.
know,
Do you-
you know, they definitely supported ISIS's attacks on Syria, and of course they were attacking Syria as well. Um, but yeah, I couldn't give you a lot of any detail really beyond that.
Richard Medhurst did a very good thing the other day that I watched. I don't know if anyone watches Richard Medhurst. He's very
Yeah,
well worth watching.
oh,
Um,
definitely.
oh yeah, he showed these 6 fronts that are occurring here against. I mean, basically, this is a war of the Middle East against Israel, effectively. But he says that Yemen is the only country that has actually come out, and Yemen is under the control of the not Inshallah, Ansar Allah,
And so are a lot.
and Ansar Allah are being called the Houthis, which is
Right.
not correct. But uh,
Yeah.
Houthis do make up some of Ansar Allah, but Ansar Allah is a different thing altogether. It may be led by Houthis, but they're not all Houthis. But
Well, isn't Houthi somebody's name though?
well, Houthi was an original leader, and there's a group of people call themselves Houthis, and then there's a
Okay.
much larger group that were formed, including the Houthis, which is Ansar Allah. So the that's my understanding of it. I mean, I'm no expert in Middle East,
Yeah.
the makeup of what they label the terrorist labels. But it seems like the Yemeni people are quite happy with Ansar Allah. The American and the Saudis are not happy with Ansar Allah. So it would be quite. It's an interesting thing that the United Nations passed a resolution that said to 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 respect the sovereignty of Yemen the day before Biden and the UK, under Biden's leadership, America and the UK bombed Yemen's sovereignty. So there's
Yeah.
something going on there that the UN said, the US said with UN's approval, which is complete lie, a complete, it's not often I can say that's a lie. I say
Mhm.
that's a misunderstanding, that's misinformation, that's not the truth. Biden told a complete lie. The White House said, acting on UN resolution, whatever it was, and I read UN resolution, and it said the sovereignty of Yemen must be respected,
Mhm.
and the Yemen life as a Coast Guard would handle this. Next thing you know, America and the UK are bombing Yemen. So complete
Yeah.
contradiction to the UN request.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
there are 6 fronts.
Yemen's not taking it lying down. They've been going out after U.S. and British ships in the Indian Ocean, which is like 1,000 miles away from Yemen.
Right.
So they're
Well, they don't really need to do that. When this started, I think they were firing rocket launchers or grenade launchers from the beach, and it wasn't that big a deal. But it's got bigger, and they're still saying Iran. Now Hezbollah has come out and said that they're going to handle Israel on their own without Iran, without
yeah,
Iran's assistance. Now,
they
I
can do
don't
that.
I don't know who Iran supports because I only read Western media. If you read Iranian media, they don't support Hezbollah. They don't support Hamas. They support the principles of, but they're not providing military assistance. But someone is, I guess. And then, of course, you've
Um,
got the system where one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
well, I mean, I think I know where I stand on who's who. Um, yeah,
Right?
yeah. So yes, to respond to the ubiquitous question, no, I do not condemn Hamas, nor do I
I
condemn.
wasn't asking.
Yeah, I know you weren't.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't condemn Hamas either. Um, I think anyone who thinks that happened in a vacuum is either blind or stupid.
yeah, or lying. Um, or if they say that.
Mm.
Um, But China came out very strongly at the ICJ hearings, where the part of the hearings where they allowed representatives from every country who wanted to speak. Sorry, I just lost my power strip here. Let me grab that again. Okay. Yeah. So let's see where.
The Chinese ambassador to the United Nations was very strong.
Yes. Let me. China has backed the right of Palestinians to use armed force against Israel, and they, point out, it's perfectly legitimate under international law. And I forget what the UN resolution was. It was back in 1982. They basically said that any means of resisting military occupation, including armed struggle, is permissible under international law. So they said that, and also I guess they recently met with representatives of Hamas.
They met with representatives of Palestine a few months ago.
Yes.
They had the Palestinian leader here, but Hamas is separate. Hamas only represents that Gaza Strip. So Palestine is a different. It's a different state. It's a state that's recognized by the United Nations, but not as a full country or a full nation.
Right. But yeah, just recently, the Chinese Foreign Ministry met with a leading Hamas official, and they were full of praise for each other. So the representative from Hamas praised the role that China plays in the Security Council of the United Nations, the ICJ, and in sending humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. And the Chinese representative, well, you can see it there, affirmed the close relationship between the Palestinian and Chinese peoples, etc., and its support for Palestinian freedom and establishment of a state. And this was the first meeting between Hamas and China since October 7th. But anyway, I thought that was a pretty significant intervention from China.
What's interesting, a lot of people don't realize this, and certainly a lot of your country friends or country mates would argue about this. China is 100% pro-peace. It's always been pro-peace. People say, oh, but it invaded Vietnam. Okay, it invaded Vietnam. When you look at the people who are saying this, I usually ask, how old are you? And they're 40 years old and they were born in 1982 or something like that. And I said, well, it happened before you were born. What's happened since you were born that China has done to show their aggression? It's a regular thing that I go through. And most people that I talk to on things like Twitter and in my YouTube are younger than me. I'm 65 years old, so most of them are younger than me. And when they're telling me these things, I say, well, how old are you? When did China last do something? Even Tiananmen was well before many of the people who are on Twitter were even born. Right. So what we can say about China is that whatever they have done in the past, they're not doing it now. China hasn't invaded anyone in your lifetime. If China hasn't invaded anyone in your lifetime, and one country has invaded many, and it depending on how old they are, it could be as many as 100 countries, then you've got to look at this and say, well, who's telling you China is aggressive? For the entire time, 100% of the time, China has been, the People's Republic of China has been in the United Nations. They have supported the two-state solution for Palestine. Right now, it doesn't look like two states is the answer. It looks like one state is the answer, and that state must be a true democratic state with true representation for all. Now,
Yeah,
I can't see that happening.
you can't see what?
I can't see I can't see that happening. As long as an Israel exists, I can only see more conflict. I mean,
Yeah, right.
I hope for, and yeah, I don't pray, but if I did, I'd pray for peace in the region. I'm watching children being slaughtered. I'm watching mothers crying over their babies. I'm watching fathers dragging kids from the rubble and running to the hospital with a clearly dead body in their hands. And you watch this sort of thing. It's horrendous. It's horrific. But the bottom line is it's got to stop. And China is saying that. It's got to stop, and it's got to stop now. And the United Nations are not pulling their weight here. So
Yeah,
what needs to happen is there needs to be a resolution that we say, well, surely we can now remove the United States from the Security Council. If we remove the United States from the Security Council,
yeah,
all of this can stop in a second.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, on one hand, unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's gonna stop real soon because despite all the international pressure, the U.S. is still sending military aid to Gaza to Israel every day. They are not, insisting that Israel let food in, um, and I guess some Western countries have stopped certain aspects of support for Israel. Canada recently decided to stop sending them arms and I think Canada and several other countries decided to restore funding to UNRWA,
Mm.
which the U.S. Congress just voted to continue not funding UNRWA, and they're by far the biggest funder. By the way, if anyone doesn't know, that's the UN. I forget what it stands for. The UN agency that's devoted to providing, aid to Palestine.
Well, there was allegations that UNRWA were providing more than just aid. They were providing intelligence through the fact that they could move around. They were
Yeah,
providing intelligence to Hamas, and some members of UNRWA are actually also members of Hamas. That's the allegation. But there's
yeah,
been no evidence
no
to
evidence.
support that. Now, I'm not saying it's true or it's not true. It really doesn't matter to me whether it is true or isn't true. But if because of that, children, anyone is starving. I go
Yeah,
back, being Chinese focused, I go back to the 1950s when China starved, and people say Mao killed 30 million of his people. Well, he didn't. First of all, 30 million is a very spurious number. Secondly, that
right.
anybody who did die died because China could not get imports because America embargoed them. And America are
Yeah.
now doing it again. They're doing it to Venezuela, they do it to Iran, they're doing it to Cuba, they're doing it to People's
Syria.
Republic, Democratic Republic, doing it to Syria. They're doing it to pretty much North Korea is what I was trying to say there, and they're
Right.
doing
Yeah.
it to pretty much everyone they disagree with, except China. But they are sanctioning and restricting China. They're just not doing it with food at the moment. They have restricted tomatoes from Xinjiang, but they're not, generally speaking, starving China at the moment. But they would if they thought that this could benefit them. That's exactly what they would do. But really, they want to
Yeah.
sell their stuff to China. So we've got this situation where America has been the cause of literally millions of deaths in the past through dozens of countries, certainly tens of countries. And they're
Yeah.
doing it again with UNRWA
Yeah.
because they have allegations rather than any proof.
Yeah. I read a figure that the U.S. is responsible for something like 20 million deaths around the world through various military or economic measures over the past few decades. And Ben Norton cited a statistic that there's been something like 500 military interventions by the U.S. of one sort or another. Either they invaded a country or they, sent weapons to one side of a conflict, or they, plotted a coup or whatever. So about 500 of these in U.S. history overall. Half of them have taken place since the fall of the Soviet Union. Half of them.
I'm going to give you a statistic here. There are 196, I think, countries in the world. It might be 194. There's a couple of places that are not necessarily countries, like the Vatican is not a country, but it's a recognized state in the United Nations. And so there's a little bit of a dispute about the actual number, but the 196 is about right. Do you know how many of them America have not put boots on the ground in?
I don't know, 10?
3.
Wow.
Liechtenstein was one, Andorra was another, and I can't remember the third one, but there's only 3. Now, some of those, like for example, Australia, they've done it with the acceptance invitation. Some of them are with invitation, but many of them are not. They're invasion or occupation of some sort.
Someone says 5. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's exactly. I did this check. It's 3. Yeah. Same old fact. Yeah. It's unless you know something I don't, but that figure came from a site that I do rely on. But I mean, there could be 2 others, and it may be that there's a couple of countries that are not countries now. So, for example, Serbia, Croatia are countries now. Yugoslavia was a country. So things have changed over history. But yeah, my understanding is it's only 3. And I did have the names. Andorra was one. Liechtenstein was another. Luxembourg wasn't one of them. But it was, yeah. Even Switzerland, neutral Switzerland, has had American boots on its ground.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this Anonymous has just put a great point up, which will segue us to the one of the next points I was going to talk about. So let's move away from conflict and death and destruction for a little while and talk about economics. The West can stop China now.
Can't is what he meant.
Yeah, I think, I was just about to say exactly that. Can't. Interesting, Americans say can and can't, and English say can and can't. And it's one of those few things that when I was a teacher, I used to try and encourage my students, if they had American accents or preferred American accents, I never had a problem with that. But I always tell them can and can't are important because English listeners hear can't, and we don't hear the t on the end. So that is too quiet for us. So when you say I can't, I sometimes think you can. So I always teach my students to say can, can't. Anyway, that's another story. This is a really interesting point because I wanted to talk about the G7 and the kind of competition that's happening between the G7 and BRICS. BRICS is now 10 countries. It was supposed to be 11 and Argentina pulled out. So it's now 10 countries. The overall GDP of BRICS has overtaken the G7. But here's the important point. Oh, someone, tomato and tomato, yeah. Potato, I don't know. Let's move back to this. In the G7, of course, there are 7 countries. Japan, Italy, UK, Germany, and France have all experienced recession. They're experiencing recession or they're in stagnation. They're getting no growth. Those 5 countries are experiencing no growth. China, on its own, just one country, had more growth than those 5 countries combined last year. So something is going wrong with the G7. And then the other 2 countries, Canada and the US, Canada is the only country in the G7 that is actually showing growth. Now, in 2021, its growth receded, but that was COVID related. 2022, 23, it's back. And Canada is genuinely a growing economy, and it's the only genuine growing economy in the G7. And
you mean China?
No. Canada is the only growing economy in the G7. America is growing, but their economy is not. What's happening
Yeah.
in America is you're getting richer, but your riches are being divided between a few hundred people and not between your people. You're not getting richer, Jeff, personally. And this is the
No, I'm
problem
not.
in America. Are you? No.
No.
The problem in
That
America, go on.
that reminds me, we forgot to finish up a point about the Palestinian conflict, which is that, yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to stop that conflict soon enough to prevent many more innocent people from being killed and so on and so forth. However, if you look at the military and economic situation, I mean, Israel cannot continue this for very much longer. Their economy is being trashed. There are, like, I think it's a million or more people, Israelis, have left the country. A lot of them have dual citizenship anyway. There's nobody living in the area around Gaza anymore. There's nobody living in the very north of Israel. And last I heard, those people are being put up in hotels at the expense of the, considerable expense of the Israeli government. Of course, Israel is engaged in this mass mobilization of hundreds of thousands of young men. They're no longer participating in the economy. The Yemeni blockade has been very effective. Hezbollah is just wreaking havoc with Israel in the northern front. And likewise, although obviously it has next to no air defense, so it can't stop Israel from killing as many civilians as it wants, Hamas is also kicking Israel's ass in Gaza. Just what reminded me of this is just how the geopolitical situation is going. China and Russia are growing in power and wealth and influence, and the West is declining. And that's just indisputable at this point. So, in the long run, things are gonna work out for Palestine. I think it's just that in the short run, as was the case in a lot of other places where the U.S. lost, like Vietnam. Before that happened, they were able to kill a vast number of people. So that's going to happen here as well. Unfortunately, I'm afraid it's going to get even worse. But in the long run, I think we will have a Palestinian state.
I'm fairly sure we will eventually. I put this comment up because this is where I was going with my commentary on what's happening in the G7. It's not just Niger, it's Mali, Benin, and a few other countries. There is a wave of countries that are now kicking France and have kicked Italy and have kicked the Americans out of those countries. And what's actually happening is right now, those countries are in a kind of conflict and they're not dealing yet. I noticed the one that I went to look at was Mali. Mali's GDP has shrunk in the last 12 months. Niger also has shrunk in the last 12 months. But if you go to other places and you look at in Africa, countries like Zimbabwe and Zambia and Tanzania, and these kinds of countries are growing, and they're growing quite rapidly. Why are they growing? Because they're growing doing business with China. And this is the major point to take out of it, that China is still growing. I saw a Bloomberg report. I actually made a video about this just the other day. I saw a Bloomberg report which said that China's exports are dropping. And I thought that doesn't marry up to what I read when I read China's releases of figures during the two sessions just a couple of weeks ago. What was happening was the European Union, the United States, the UK, and Japan, China's shipping to those three countries in region has decreased. And it's decreased quite considerably to America. That's because of restrictions, American restrictions. What's happened in the UK, what's happened in the European Union, and what's happening in Japan and also in South Korea, is that those countries are reducing their trade with China because they haven't got enough money to trade with China.
Hmm.
They can't afford to buy things that they need. So their economy is declining. It's going to
Yeah.
happen. What China has done is it's increased all of its trade 8% up, 8% up in exports and 6% up in imports. Now, that's not an indication of a declining economy. When your imports are going up and your exports are going up further, this is a great situation to be in. And everyone says China's declining because they're not dealing with America so much. What they're
Hmm.
doing is they're sending stuff to places such as Mexico. Mexico is the best example because it's the largest. They're sending stuff to Mexico, and Mexico are exporting to America. So the sales to America from Mexico have increased. America's imports from Mexico have increased superbly. They've just gone up like a rocket. Now, what's happening there is China's sales to Mexico have gone up on the same scale. So, in other words, you Americans are now buying made in China, supplied by Mexico, or supplied
Mm.
by Ecuador, or supplied by Paraguay. And you're buying from what used to be global South countries, underdeveloped countries, which are now in the process of entering a developed country or developing country phase. So these underdeveloped are turning into developing, and America and some of the European countries are turning into declining nations. Somebody
Yeah.
put the comment up there, and it's gone through there, that it's based on inflation. America's GDP is based on things like the high cost of health, the high cost of the dollar, the high inflation, and the high interest rates that you have compared to China. Our house mortgage interest rates in China are 3% and
Well,
going down. They've gone down twice in the last 12 months. So they're likely to go down again because inflation is zero. They literally, China has no additional expense. I was joking about this yesterday. I had a haircut a couple of weeks ago, looking great, and it cost 15 RMB. That's $2 for a haircut.
well,
Well, you say, wow,
20
when I,
here.
sorry,
20 here, at least.
$20.
That's cheap.
Is that why you don't get your haircut?
That's part of the reason. I mean, I started not doing it during COVID for obvious reasons, and I mean, I guess I still, you know,
Yeah.
still don't. I mean,
Well,
you know,
my haircut has gone from 10 RMB when I arrived in China 19 years ago to 15 RMB a couple of weeks ago. So it's gone up by 50%. That's 20 years. It's not
Mm.
bad. And my
Yeah.
my hairdresser did tell me, hairdresser, I won't call him a hairdresser, he's a barber. My barber did tell me that Chinese New Year next year, which is it's not six, it's 8 months, 10 months away. It's a year away, basically. He said, next year I'm going to put it up to 18 RMB. I said, good on you. He said, is that all right? Will you still come? Yeah, of course I will. For 18 RMB,
Yes.
21 RMB would be $3.
Okay. Well, you can
That's
afford
what's
that.
happening in the developing world. And what's happening in the developed world is your GDP is now based on false information, basically
Right.
ghost information. So that's what I was going to say. Zambia is up, Mali is down, Canada is up, America is fraudulent. That's the only way to
Yeah.
describe America's GDP. And the other five members of the G7 have all stagnated or even gone backwards.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, do we want to turn our attention to the main topic of the evening now, since we've been going for 40 minutes and haven't gotten
Yeah,
to it yet?
the state of Arkansas, I used to call that Arkansas, forced a Chinese company to sell up farmland. Yeah, China has now stopped buying wheat from America. In fact, there's a good reason behind the wheat problem, and that is that the price of wheat has dropped dramatically, and China has cancelled hundreds of millions of tons of sales of wheat, purchases of wheat, because it's cheaper to pay the penalty on those contracts and rebuy them at a new price. So that's what's happening with the wheat. It's and they've done the same to Australia. They're going to still buy it, and they'll still buy it at the international market price. But the international market price has reduced so much that it's cheaper to cancel the deal, pay the penalty, and reorder the wheat. That's what's going to happen with the wheat.
Wow.
And they go $12 to $18. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. Food is
And China is buying wheat from Russia now, but not as much as people think. It's not that big a deal, I don't think.
Yeah.
So let's move on, as you say, to the big one, TikTok.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Well, I mean, the efforts to ban TikTok started here when Trump was president. So, not very long after TikTok was founded and became a big thing. So they can't stand to see a Chinese-based or founded, in this case, company being highly successful. It's only intensified from, well, I mean, it kind of, people stopped talking about it for a while. I guess Trump actually got to the point where TikTok was gonna be banned. I guess I forget the details. I assume there was a bill and Trump signed it and so forth. But the Supreme Court said no, you can't do that. First Amendment and all of that. So it didn't really take off here until after October 7th, because the Israeli lobby started putting enormous pressure on the U.S. to reopen that can of worms and ban TikTok. All along it's been motivated by an effort to undermine China economically and
no. TikTok issue has nothing to do with China economics and China's technology. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. If you think that, it's because that's what the Western media want you to think. This is the biggest problem we're facing. It has nothing at all to do with China's technology. They know they're not going to get TikTok's algorithm. It's as simple as that. TikTok is not going to give it to them. Simple. Now, the owners of... Go on.
What I mean is, TikTok is a profitable company. It was founded in China, and I think it's like 20% Chinese owned now, something like that.
It's slightly more than 20%. The two owners have 20%. The employees have 20%.
Okay,
and
so 40%. All right.
Yeah. So, well, no, don't forget there are 8,400 employees in America who are sharing in that 20% ownership too.
Right. Okay, good. Yeah, I misspoke. What is it, like half of the employees are not Chinese? I forget the exact figure.
I'm not sure of the number, but 8,000. I think it's either 8,420 or 8,240, but it's over 8,000 employees in America are part owners of TikTok and ByteDance. Yeah. ByteDance, the parent company, but 60% is owned by international investors, which includes people like BlackRock. So you've got Vanguard probably in there too. The usual suspects are probably in there raking off their profitability, and they will have to have a meeting to decide whether or not. Let's assume that House Resolution, I think it's 5721, passes. They will then have to have a meeting to decide what course of action to take. Course of action 1, follow the resolution and sell to an American corporation or an American conglomerate. Number 2, pull out of America altogether. Number 3, fight it through the Supreme Court. Now, if they fight it through the Supreme Court, they are most likely going to win, and that law will be scrapped. The question is, do they want to fight it? when will this get signed off? It won't get signed off until it can go. It's been through the Senate. It got to go through the House
No, the
Congress.
House.
Yeah,
It's
and
been through the House,
been through the House.
passed
So
by a vote of something like 360 to
big vote.
52 or something crazy like that.
And once it goes through the second vote, it then goes to sit on the president's desk. He's not going
go
to
to the
sign
Senate.
that until the lame duck period, if he gets reelected. If he doesn't get reelected, I think he might even not sign it and leave it for Trump. Trump is saying now that he's not going to ban it. He's changed his
He's
mind.
saying now he's opposed to banning TikTok. But there's already an investment group put together by Trump's Treasury Secretary, former Secretary, Treasury Secretary, to buy out China's share of, or Chinese investors' share of TikTok. So, basically, the plan is to threaten TikTok with a ban, and if they don't if ByteDance, the parent company, doesn't divest itself of all Chinese ownership, and if they don't agree, then they will be banned. Basically, that's what the bill says. And let's see. Okay, I can finally show this. I thought I had it set up so that. Oh, okay. Yeah, here we go. So Facebook is considered to be TikTok's biggest competitor, and where is it? Oh gosh, I don't see it in here. Maybe it's in a different article. Oh, let's try this one. This is one that Ben Norton put out the other day. Anyway, I don't know if okay, here we go. Banning TikTok would boost Alphabet, Meta, and Snap, Forbes chirped excitedly in 2023. For its part, Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, has spent years lobbying against TikTok. The Washington Post reported in 2020 that Meta is paying one of the biggest Republican consulting firms in the country to orchestrate a nationwide campaign seeking to turn the public against TikTok. So, essentially, Western or U.S.-based tech giants want to have a monopoly on social media and other technologies. So they would love to have control of TikTok too. And they just come up with all these ridiculous claims that, for instance, that China is using TikTok to, the Chinese government is using TikTok to spy on Americans and mine their data, which, I guess they could, but there's no evidence that they're doing so.
They can't. They can't. Yeah. That's a myth. The data is all stored in Texas now by Oracle. Chinese government have no access to that.
Yeah, that's true that it's stored in the U.S.
So that
I guess they can still spy on people. I don't know, but the data is stored in the United States. Of course, as many of you probably know, the CEO of TikTok is actually Singaporean. I guess he's of Chinese descent, but he has nothing to do with China. He's not a Chinese citizen. And so they hauled him before these hearings in the U.S. Congress, and all these Congress people were saying, so have you ever belonged to the Chinese Communist Party? The Communist Party of China.
That was just Tom Cotton, and Ted Cruz does the same.
Yeah. And he's like, dude, I'm Singaporean. How would I belong to the Chinese Communist Party?
Well, he has lived and worked in Beijing. He went to work for ByteDance when he was a capital venturist, and one of his investments was ByteDance, and he went to work there as a CFO. When ByteDance needed a CEO for TikTok, they they gave him the gig. So I mean, he's obviously good at his job. Here's an interesting thing. I just saw someone. This Seymour has just put something up here. The law to ban TikTok gives the POTUS a permission, gives him the right to ban any websites. That's not strictly true, but it's close to true. It's any website controlled by a foreign adversary or an entity. Now, what this means is anyone they don't like, they then just nominate them as foreign adversaries or this particular type of entity, and then they can ban it. So right now, what this says is pretty much correct. TikTok is not the issue. And many people have been saying, well, why don't the Americans just buy VPNs and use TikTok? Have you read the bill? I have.
Yeah, I have. But why you bring that up?
Okay. The bill has a Part 2, 1B. Part 2, 1B says, and I'm not going to quote the wording because it's just legalese, but effectively it says if you use any other means, if anyone provides somebody with other means to access a banned app, they will be punishable effectively. Now, what this means is Express, Astral, Nord, Surfer, whatever they're called, all of these VPN providers, any of them are based in America, then they will become banned entities. They will get, so if you use a VPN, now this is something China is accused of all the time, banning a VPN. I made a video about it the other day. VPNs are not banned in China. I've got one.
No, they're
I had policemen in this room a few days ago looking at my YouTube. How does that happen? Well, because they came to visit my wife about an entirely different matter. And, they're very keen to, they were looking around the house. It's because we got a very nicely decorated, it's a very old apartment, which is brand new inside. Literally 100% of my apartment it was gutted and rebuilt from the inside. The outside is, even the outside of the apartment looks good now. But it's in a building which is 60 years old. And they're, wow, look at this, look at this. And I was busy working. And my wife said, oh, this is where my husband works. And I was on YouTube at the time. I was doing something on YouTube. And the guy said, oh, YouTuber. He's like, yeah, I'm on YouTube. And he said, can I follow you? And he's now following me on YouTube, a policeman.
Oh, awesome.
So he's got a VPN on his phone. I've got a VPN on my computer, and the police didn't care. So
I mean, you could do YouTube videos if you didn't have a VPN, right?
I couldn't do YouTube. I can do what we're doing now, but I couldn't access YouTube. I'm not on my VPN to use this format. And interestingly, I can do this. We're on a platform called StreamYard now, and I can use StreamYard on my Chinese mobile phone. No problem at all. So StreamYard is not a banned app. Many things in the West are not banned. The things that are banned are the things that have misinformation or the things that have data storage, which is not stored in China. Facebook was banned in China. It's the only one. And the reason was 2009. I used to use Facebook when I first came to China. But in 2009, what happened was people on Facebook organized riots in Xinjiang and in Tibet. Those riots caused the deaths of about 200 people. It was a huge.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. My son was actually asking me today, why China censored Facebook. And I knew that it had something to do with Facebook, not agreeing to, whatever rules the Chinese government sets for foreign corporations to operate there, but I didn't know any details. And I definitely didn't know that.
Google and the likes, YouTube is part of Google, they don't comply with the Chinese regulations and they pulled out of China. That was their choice. Microsoft does. I can use Microsoft Bing to search anything I want. Now, there are things I can't get through Microsoft Bing because it complies with Chinese laws, and it won't give me information on things like Tiananmen Square because it's misinformation. So China's government does everything it can to remove misinformation from the internet inside of the Great Firewall. And if you want to operate your app inside of China, you must comply with those rules. And this is one that Google said we're not going to do. Facebook had a different situation. They were asked to provide information about how these riots were organized through Washington. Strangely enough, people in Washington were organizing riots in Tibet and Xinjiang, and those riots resulted in the deaths of many people. So literally, people got away with murder because of Facebook. Now, if Facebook ever says at some stage in the future, we would like to open to the Chinese market, then the Chinese government are going to say, not until you've provided us with the information that we asked for back in 2009. You're banned until you do. Google can come in tomorrow if they choose to. That's a fact. Bing is already operating
they all
here.
could. They all could if they
I can
chose.
do Yahoo searches. I can do Bing searches. I can watch CNN. I can watch Fox News. I can watch a lot of stuff. I can't watch BBC. BBC is banned as well because the British government banned CGTN, and that's a reciprocal tit for tat thing, which I personally don't approve of, but I guess I understand the reasoning. If your people are not allowed to watch our Chinese television, we're not letting people watch your misinformation. So,
I don't know.
Anyway, where were we going with that? The VPN thing is the largest issue I see coming out of this bill. There's also another bill. People can look this up. It's not a House resolution. It's a bill called S686. And that is a bill that allows for a $250,000 fine for using a VPN to access a banned app. Now, in America, you're not allowed to watch RT, Russia Today. You're not allowed to watch some Chinese sites. Now, why are you not allowed?
You can just not. I mean, you can't stream it. You have to, no cable company offers it. You have to go to their website.
Right. Okay. But that's effectively a banned app. If you ever need a VPN to go on an app, so for example, Iranian apps, Iranian TV, all banned in your country. If you use a VPN, S686, which is before Congress now, it was submitted, I think February or March last year. It's been in the pipeline for 12 months. If that gets accepted, then VPNs are banned. Now, effectively, VPNs won't be banned. They're only banned if you're accessing a banned app or a banned platform.
Right.
So it's really, hang on, the US Restrict Act, I don't know this one.
Not sure what that
Using a VPN in America is punishable by the US Restrict Act. I don't know.
Not in general, like they advertise VPNs all the time on YouTube and on various people's shows. So VPNs are definitely legal here, but there might be some restrictions on what you can do with them. I'm not sure.
I think it's effectively an unpoliceable law to say VPNs are banned, because the very nature of a VPN is that it prevents you from being found. So how do you police that when you can't find the people doing it? The fact is, if somebody is arrested on a different matter, and let's say if it's the serious ones are things like sedition and child pornography. They're the serious ones. So if someone is arrested on child pornography and they're accessing, another country's banned child, all child pornography is banned, I think, which certainly should be. And if they're accessing it through a VPN, then there's a further offense. If you're a seditious person and you're planning some kind of treason, you'll probably get arrested for that because of something else that you've done. And then they'll find another offense when they check your devices. But to actually police the use of a VPN, I don't know how possible that is. I don't know enough technology to know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right.
But back on the issue of like why all of a sudden this is moving forward after it was dead in the water for so long. Again, there's all kinds of evidence. The conflict in Palestine is the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. So, one thing we know is that just about every member of Congress receives donations from AIPAC, the
Israeli lobby, yeah.
Israeli lobby, main Israeli lobby organization here in the United States. So this person says the real reason for banning TikTok is to censor pro-Palestinian voices. I don't agree with that because obviously the effort to get at China in some way is a major driving force behind it.
I disagree. I disagree. The major driving force behind it might have been that during the Trump era. Yes, I agree with you there. But it's dropped off the radar. And I think CEO Lawyer is probably right that we don't have a TikTok problem. China's TikTok is better.
No, we don't have a TikTok problem.
You have a genocide problem.
Yeah.
And people are viewing genocide. Interestingly, I had an hour to kill last night, and something I very rarely find myself doing. I was glancing through shorts, and the shorts were interesting because let's bring us a little closer together. The shorts were interesting because I was watching. Every second short was an Israeli promotion on YouTube. They were promoting people from Israel and also Ukraine. I was seeing all these Russian tanks being destroyed by Ukrainian drones, and I was meeting all of these lovely ladies who work in the Israeli military. And I'm scrolling through these thinking, this is how propaganda works. And after an hour or so, I just thought, I can't take any more of this. But it does suck people in. And now I understand why so many Americans believe it, because the only media they're watching, for many of them, is YouTube. And the only information they're getting is what YouTube wants you to see. We have another channel. Myself and two other people have set up another channel called the 3Ms.social. Now that channel cannot be found if you go on YouTube and enter the 3ms.social. That's its proper name. And you have to scroll down 26 sites before you open our site because we are pro-China. The 3Ms.social is not completely hidden. It's very well hidden. Now, I'm talking about in YouTube. In Google, if you search it, you'll get it straight away. But in the YouTube platform where we are, the name of our site cannot be found until you've scrolled through 26 other sites. What's wrong with that?
That's crazy.
There you go.
Yeah. I just saw a poll the other day that found that half of Americans do not know whether Israel has had more people killed or Palestine has had more people killed since October 7th, even though it's obviously astronomically more Palestinians than Israelis. Most Americans do not know that because getting poor information or they're not, getting much information. They're not following it that closely because they're too busy.
Hang on a second. Now you're talking about combatants because honestly, it's 100,000 people are dead now. I think it's certainly well over 75,000. So close to 100,000.
Well, the official figure from the Palestinian Ministry of Health is about 31,000 plus, another 8 or so thousand buried in the rubble that almost certainly are dead as well. But they have very little capacity to, count the dead accurately. So, I'm sure it's far more than that.
My understanding was when was that information? My understanding it was much higher than that. It was 72,000 at one stage just a few days ago.
That's injured.
No, I thought that was okay. All right.
and there's another group that I think their figure was about 42,000 at this point, but they were counting people buried in the rubble as dead, even though it's something like, high 90s percentage wise who will wind up being, although not all of them. My point is, half of Americans do not know, more than half do not know that there have been tens of thousands of Palestinians versus only, including military people, about 1,500 Israelis killed.
Wow.
Most Americans don't know that.
Mm.
And yet, most Americans, something like 70%, support a ceasefire. They just, it's just because they're generally in favor of peace. It's not because they know that what Israel is doing is wrong and a genocide and so forth. So, most young Americans know that.
Yeah.
Most young Americans are pretty well informed about what's going on because they get their news from social media.
And this is why the TikTok thing is being banned. Judge Dredd mentioned long ago, and I think we all agree with this. YouTube restricts all videos positive on China and promotes all lies about China. It also shadow bans criticism of the USA. And let's apply that to Israel, Gaza as well. Whatever is the US and Ukraine, whatever is the US narrative is promoted on our social media, but not on TikTok. That is the reason. It has nothing at all to do with technology. That is the reason.
Wait, what has nothing to do with technology? Sorry, I was looking for something.
The TikTok ban, and it's not really called the TikTok ban. I mean, that's just the media name for it. It's a restriction on foreign ownership of apps. And this is why, they want you to believe this is a ban on TikTok. This is why the media calls it the ban on TikTok. What it really is not a ban on TikTok at all. This is a ban on foreign-owned apps at any time in the future. Now, here's what's going to happen. We know for a fact that this is going to get passed. We know that. Let's be honest. This is going to get passed. Then it'll be signed into law. During the lame duck period, it'll be signed into law. Then once it's in law, this is not about TikTok. TikTok will do one of three things. It'll pull out, it'll sell, or it'll fight in the court. Now, if it fights in the court, the ban should be overturned under the First and Fifth Amendment, because TikTok has never been given any due process. That's the Fifth Amendment, and they don't have a presumption of innocence. They have a presumption of guilt when they haven't done anything wrong. So it's quite likely that this would get overturned. If it gets overturned, we're okay. But if TikTok just pulls out and says, we're not going to bother fighting this, 170,000 Americans are going to lose their entertainment, 8,000 will lose their jobs, 7 million will lose their small business access and have to find another way to do business other than TikTok.
Even Biden has a TikTok account.
Yeah, but then this is the most important thing. This bill will never be challenged until they ban some other app in the future. So they are going to use it unless TikTok fights it. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't care. I would rather see TikTok pull out. As someone mentioned, TikTok is only 10%. 10% of, they have 955 million, and it's actually 17% of all of the users are in America. But I'm one of those. So think about that. I'm sitting in China using TikTok, and I'm going through an American VPN server.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do care for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's a free speech issue, it's a First Amendment issue. People ought to be able to, watch and share content on, social media. And secondly, a lot of people, I mean, I don't know what we would consider a lot, but, a significant number of people make all or a lot of their income from TikTok. Or a big portion of it if they're a business that markets themselves on TikTok. So this is going to hurt American businesses and business people as well as general public. So yeah, it would be a terrible thing if it went through. But I think that certainly the CEO and TikTok in general have said they are going to fight it, and I think they will win again if this gets passed and goes to court. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. But one other thing I wanted to show people, if you could, I've got the article called up. This was out of the Washington Post. And basically, the point is that this whole notion that that TikTok is being used to promote pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel views to an extent that's not true of other social media apps like Facebook or X or whatever. It is simply not true. Where's it? Oh, there it is. So Facebook and Instagram, TikTok's US-based rivals, show a remarkably similar gap between pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian views. So on Facebook, the hashtag Free Palestine hashtag is found on more than 11 million posts, 39 times more than those with the Stand With Israel hashtag, and similarly on Instagram. So these figures are, I forget exactly what, I don't think they gave the exact figure for TikTok, but it's pretty similar. Certainly the fact that our Congress is so captured by the Israeli lobby, and Israel is lobbying very hard on this, has a lot to do with why this is being pushed so hard right now. But the claim that people are getting more pro-Palestinian, anti-genocide information from TikTok than from other social media apps is just not true, because regardless of what social media app people use, they can see what Israel's doing with their own eyes, and the vast majority of people are going to be against it regardless of what social media they're on.
Let me correct you on this, because what you're showing us there is correct. This is how they misinform us, right? What you're showing us there is the number of hashtags. Now, what they have not shown is the number of views. It doesn't matter if you hashtag something, even if it's being suppressed. So let's say there are 6 million hashtags on Facebook. That means 6 million people have done something there, or there is a huge movement. But then Facebook can suppress those hashtags. TikTok does not suppress the hashtags.
That's
so
true.
The views are what's important. If there were 6 million views on Facebook, 6 million hashtags on Facebook and 6 million hashtags on TikTok, there would be 40, 50, 100 million views on TikTok and 7 million views on Facebook. That's the information they're not giving you. And so that's why TikTok is getting banned and not Facebook. This is the information that they're not going to give you. I bet
that's not the only reason why, of course, because TikTok is a foreign company with some American ownership, and
you're getting bogged down in the wrong picture, Jeff. The picture is not that it's a foreign-owned company. The picture is that they can't control that foreign-owned company. They can control the view. It's not going to change the number of hashtags for free Palestine. It's not going to change the number of people who view Palestine as a problem. It's not going to change any of that. But what they're going to try and do is change public opinion. So all of a sudden, on TikTok, we will, if it was owned by an American conglomerate or an American syndicate, then we will start to see many more pro-Gaza, pro-Israel. And even if there are 6 million pro-Palestine tags, we will not see them. They're there, but we won't be showing them. As a user, we have to go look for them. That's the difference. It's not about who owns it. It's about who can control it. So let's not get bogged down in the number of hashtags, and because that's what they want you to do. They've given you your argument. They've given you your defense. And they're saying this has nothing to do with TikTok and Gaza, because look at the hashtags on Facebook. But what's the views? I bet you they're not showing the views in there.
Yeah, they do. Um, Videos with a
Billion
hashtag
views. There you
uh,
go.
both received about 2 billion views, hashtags Israel and Palestine. On TikTok in the United States within the past 30 days, Free Palestine has appeared on 233,000 posts, 38 times more than videos tagged with Stand with Israel. Let's see.
On
The
TikTok.
similarity
Yeah.
in total views suggests that the average hashtag Israel video was viewed more often. This is so even on TikTok, you know, pro-Israel posts are being viewed disproportionately more, even though there's a lot more pro-Palestine posts. And actually,
Wow.
activists, for Palestinian liberation have criticized TikTok for having a pro-Israel bias. So, TikTok said it had removed more than 925,000 videos for promoting Hamas or otherwise violating the app's policies around violence, hate speech, et cetera, between October 7th and
That's
now.
TikTok complying with the law. Yeah.
Yeah, TikTok and Meta both ban content promoting Hamas. Both companies have also been accused by pro-Palestinian supporters of skewing their content in favor of Israel, the opposite of what TikTok's critics have accused it of. But yeah, I mean, bottom line is that their argument, I mean, obviously, they shouldn't be trying to censor pro-Palestinian opinion anyway, but their argument that they would be able to suppress pro-Palestinian content simply by singling out TikTok for banning, isn't supported by.
TikTok is a family site, Jeff. It has
Yeah.
it has its own guidelines and its own standards.
Right.
You're not allowed to show nudity on TikTok, the same as you're not allowed to show nudity on YouTube.
Facebook.
You are allowed to show violence on TikTok, and you are allowed to show it on YouTube, but usually comes with a warning and it gets suppressed. That's normal when things like that happen. What TikTok is not doing is it's not suppressing legitimate Gaza concerns. What YouTube is doing, and I know this for a fact, it's doing it to me, is it's suppressing legitimate anti-narrative concerns. One of the narratives is Gaza and Israel. One of the narratives is China. One is Ukraine. So we've got these different narratives which are being suppressed, but TikTok is not suppressing them. What it is doing is it is actually reducing the number of things that we can see because they breach TikTok's guidelines themselves. So I think let's not get too bogged down in the Washington Post's defense, because that is designed to make us think, oh, it's not about that, it's about technology. It's not about technology. It's not about China.
Okay, but the reason I showed that article is that, even the Post is indicating that, there's more pro-Palestinian than pro-Israel content on all the social media sites, not just TikTok.
That's because more people actually feel that way. Contrary to what the government would like us to think, your government and even mine would like us to think more people want this to stop than continue. Simple.
Yeah. And that's, the bottom line is people who view TikTok content in the United States are largely the same people who produce the content. So it's not coming from foreign countries. It's coming from people in the United States who are already pro-Palestine, who want to promote their views. And so this idea that there's foreign influence driving this is just complete bullshit. So.
Yeah, China is very neutral. I mean, it's not neutral. It is pro the UN stance on Gaza. That's what China is. It's pro the UN stance. China supports the UN stance on it. And it has done since the day it came into the United Nations more than 50 years ago. It's about 50 years ago, maybe a little less than that, but it supported the UN stance
Yeah.
and still does. And that UN stance currently, until it changes, that UN stance is the two-state solution. And I personally think it may be too late for that. Anyway, we're coming up towards the end. I wanted to touch on Princess Kate. Do you know anything about the Princess Kate story?
Well, I guess it turns out she had cancer, but they were hiding that for a long time and nobody knew what was going on. It was assumed maybe she was anorexic or whatever.
No,
But
that was Diana was anorexic. I think that was one of the stories. One of the stories was that she'd been stabbed by her husband's lover. Another story was that she was dead. She's already dead.
well,
Maybe
she is.
and what I mean, my point for raising this is this: media throughout the world, but particularly in the British Commonwealth, has had a field day with the Kate story. Kate disappeared from the face of the earth. She went into hospital for what was considered to be a minor pre-prepared. Everything was going to be okay, and she'd be out in a couple of days. But it turns out she wasn't. So the conspiracy theorists all over the world. My wife was asking me here in China the other day, "What do you know about Princess Kate? Is she dead? Has she been stabbed?" I don't know. And I went looking, and sure enough, there's all these theories about what it was. And then came the International Women's Day fake picture. Well, all she was trying to do was to show a nice picture of her family on this particular day. And she did that, and she got pilloried for it because it was a digitally altered picture. Now, she's been going through radiation and chemotherapy. Her skin is probably blistered and blotched. Her hair probably partially fallen out. She may have lost a couple of teeth. I don't know. I know people who've been through this, and it's not nice. My son went through all of this a few years ago, and it was not nice. He looked horrible. He looked older than his grandfather when he was 39 years old. Literally, that's what chemo, radiation, and all these things do for you or do to you. So she's trying to avoid that. My point is not about that. It's about where people get their news. And every single story that I saw for a period of about 3 weeks about the royal family was wrong. Everything was wrong. It was all supposition. All of the headlines ended in a question mark, and none of them told the truth. That is what causes us to misunderstand the news, because we believe the story we want to believe. China is 100%. Everything you ever read about China is 100% wrong, or 98% wrong. The rest of it is this speculation and misinformation, and Kate is the perfect example of how they do it. So anybody who saw any news in the last 2 months, 6 weeks or more about Kate Middleton, Princess of Wales, has seen how the media manipulates our emotions, how the media tells us what they want us to think, and how they speculate on things so that we form an opinion. Now, the thing about China with Kate, it came out. The truth has come out. Now, she may die. I don't know how serious her cancer is. She may die. And if she does die, they will announce that. But that's how we finalize those stories. Tibet has been going on for over 70 years. The lies and speculation about what's happening in Tibet have been going on for 70 years. Hong Kong for the last 5 years or 8 years. Xinjiang for 10 or 12 years. Taiwan much more recently. China could invade Taiwan. Yes, they could, but they're not going to. So you see how this speculation drives public opinion into a place they don't belong. And that's why I wanted to raise the Kate story. We've been driven and manipulated into believing something is happening inside of the royal family by speculation, exactly the same as China. That's the important point.
Somebody was just commenting they had heard that there were places in the U.S. that didn't even have Wi-Fi or
Yeah.
like Ethernet dial-up. I haven't heard that, but I do know. Yeah, I do know that there are places in Mississippi and I guess some Indian reservations and various other rural, mainly rural areas that are so poor that they don't even have running water. So, um, there's definitely some third world like conditions or global south like conditions in parts of the U.S.
This is interesting that you say this because I've traveled extensively through rural China. Now, there are no villages anywhere in China that don't have electricity, water, running water, and a sealed road going in or out, or both of
Yeah,
them. If it's a go through, if it's in a mountain, you'll have a sealed road going into it and then coming out the same road. But most of them have a road going in and out. Every single village, every village in China has 5G now, including base camp on Mount Everest.
well, yeah.
There you
I mean,
go.
China has eliminated extreme poverty. The U.S. has not.
Well, in fact, the US is going deeper and deeper into poverty. It's 2022, it was 11%. It's now over 12%. You're going every year, you're going 1% more into poverty in the US. Something going badly
it
wrong with your
fluctuates
system.
it fluctuates between like 10 and 15%.
Mm.
And of course, it's much higher for certain groups of people of color, the main ones, and it's higher
Okay,
for children.
this is an interesting point from Jim. I agree with you. The US is huge, not huge. There are plenty of places without a cell tower in 100 miles. Maybe that's true. I've traveled across the Gobi Desert, the Tengeli Desert, and the Taklamakan Desert in China on a bicycle and never been out of cell phone contact. Never.
Well, I was just in the gym on campus, Indiana University here in Bloomington today, and noticed that I got one bar reception inside the gym, like smack in the middle of town.
That
So
may
there
be
are
because of the
patches.
structure of the building. I mean, there are buildings here. I lived in an apartment that had very poor reception, but if I went to the balcony, no problem at all. But the building was built of solid concrete, steel reinforced, and it was a very, very solid building. And so, yeah, that can happen. But
I don't think
inside of buildings in China, you have Wi-Fi in everyone, and even elevators and car parks, your phone will work.
No, I don't think it's the building was the problem because when I drove away and went up the street, it was still not very good. So there's and it depends on what company you're with. I'm with T-Mobile because it's very cheap, and they do have a pretty extensive network, but at least in some parts of the country, there's still places where it's a little spotty, and I don't think that's true in China. So
no. Also, there's an interesting thing. If you deduct Hawaii from America, China is bigger. If you add Taiwan to China, China is bigger than America. They are that close in size. I mean, everyone in China adds Taiwan anyway, but Americans, when they draw a map, sometimes leave Taiwan off and say this is not China. If you want to draw a map of China, it should have Taiwan and Hainan Islands. They're both provinces of China. But as long as you count them, China is bigger. If you say, well, let's discount Taiwan because it's politically different, okay, I can get that. So I don't agree with it, but I'll get it. I accept it. And we take Taiwan away, and you leave Hawaii and Alaska in the United States. America is bigger. They are that close in terms of size. They really are very, very close. Anyway, we've got to an hour and 30, and I think it might be time to go. I can hear It's 10:44, and I just heard my wife putting the kettle on, which means coffee. So
Oh,
second
okay.
coffee of
Well,
the day coming up.
okay.
And by the
Well,
way,
I'm
one of the
going
things
in a different direction than you. I'm gonna have more sedative stuff.
that you're going to bed. Have you seen my new
Yes.
cup?
No. Huh. That's funny.
It's funny because so many people think this is banned. My wife bought this on Taobao for me as a joke. The balloon and the poo.
That's cute. Um,
Yeah, and this is a Tom and Jerry cup.
huh.
Tom, Jerry. Okay,
Well,
so yeah, Sync Master, we're going to end sometime. So we have to end. We have to bring everything to an end. But we will. Thank you, James, Kevin. I will enjoy my coffee. We will be back in probably a month or 6 weeks. We do this kind of, I guess, about twice every 3 months. We don't do it every month, but maybe we could set aside a time in a month and do it again, because it is good to
yeah.
catch up and just discuss both sides. Thank you,
Yeah,
Sync
I
Master,
mean,
for
we
joining
should
us.
try to do it every month. We may not get it right on the nose every time, but we've been doing it pretty close,
Yeah.
never more than a month and a half, but usually every month. So we can
Yeah,
keep doing that.
this is just one more point about mobile. China is a
Yeah.
cashless society, and some people still use cash, so it's getting harder.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Brit in China, which is also what I am, a Brit in China, I think we have to evolve.
Yeah.
I still carry a wallet when I'm traveling. I don't carry it when I'm in my local hometown, but I carry it if I travel. I carry a wallet. It's got my credit card.
Yeah,
and
well,
some
what if your phone reception goes out though?
never goes
And
out.
you need a wallet. Huh?
It never goes out.
Yeah.
It's never
Yeah, I
happened.
mean,
It's as
it
simple
very
as that.
rarely does here, but yeah,
Not
I
even
mean,
red.
I use either my phone or debit card to pay for pretty much everything. I hardly ever carry cash.
Well, the first smartphone that I had was a Sony Ericsson, and I upgraded it to an Apple iPhone 4. In fact, I was given an iPhone 4 as a gift. I would not have bought one.
iPhone 4?
Yeah,
Wow,
this
that's pretty
is
ancient.
how long ago it was, is what I'm saying.
Oh,
And I
oh,
have.
oh, okay.
I mean, I'm using a Vivo now. This is a Chinese brand, Vivo.
Mhm. Yeah.
Very, very good, like a Huawei, Oppo, Vivo, Honor. There's a few of them.
Mhm.
I have not, in my entire period of being in China, using a smartphone, ever had a day where I did not have full coverage and access to my money. It happened in Australia a little while ago. Optus dropped out. We call it Droptus as a joke in Optus. It dropped out, and a lot of people couldn't access their money. Simple, they couldn't. They're normally using their
Yeah.
phone. ATMs wouldn't work, so they couldn't get cash because the ATMs were using
Right.
Optus. So that was a huge problem, and that for some reason, a lot of Australians are very anti a digital currency because it will replace. It's going to replace the proper currency, and most Australians are quite happy to have digital money, but they don't want it as the only option, which is what the banks are pushing for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
well, I mean, I like it, but yeah, there is the issue of, well, what if something goes wrong?
yeah.
Yeah, I like digital money
Yeah.
a lot.
The worst that can happen in China is you lock yourself inside. You lock yourself out with your phone inside the house. That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
That's actually happened. I think we've all been through that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. We went up
Yes,
to
great comments,
a good
everybody.
number of
And
views.
just one more thing. If you, I know that the vast majority of you are watching this on Jerry's channel, but could you please go to my channel and give this video a like?
Give it a like at least.
Click
yeah.
on it so that it'll play, so I'll get the view credits, and give it a like. And let's see.
The bitter pill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just at the bitter pill, youtube.com/@thebitterpill.
Yeah. Do Jeff a favor and give him a like. It can't hurt. All right, everybody. Thank you very much, Jeff. Thank you, and I'll see you in about a month. Bye for now.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for all the questions and your time this evening. wherever you are.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't see you've got the button to end the stream. So